So January is Human Trafficking Prevention Month. Technically, this slide is a little wrong. And January 11th is Human Trafficking Awareness Month. I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. My journey into this advocacy began in 2013. You may recall that in February 2014, the Super Bowl came to New Jersey, and I live in New Jersey. And so there was a lot of discussion about it. I just became more aware about it. I started talking to people about it. And for those who are social media, um, advo- um, you're active on social media, it really was instrumental in my journey. And so these were three quotes that I saw among many others, but just really spoke to me. I always wondered why somebody didn't do something about that. And then I realized I am somebody. And I wanted to be able to tell my children that, once I heard about this injustice, I did not stay silent. And the one that really spoke to me a lot was Edmund Burke said, nobody made a greater mistake than he who did nothing because he could only do a little. Now, he also said, and everybody quotes, that the only thing necessary for evil to triumph um, is for people to do nothing. And, you know, I found myself that the problem of human trafficking was so huge. And this quote convinced me, well, maybe I can do a little. Now, human trafficking reduces people who are made in the image of God, God's image bearers, to be commodities that are bought and sold for a price. It's the second largest and the fastest growing global crime. And the fight against human trafficking often seems overwhelming. We have an opportunity as Christian women in media to shine a light into one of the darkest injustices of our time. I mentioned about the Super Bowl because we're all in the New York, New Jersey area, and the World Cup is coming to New Jersey this year. June and July, there will be 18 games played in between New York, Boston, Philadelphia, Washington area, but mostly in New Jersey, and the finals are in New Jersey. So here in New Jersey, we're going to be hearing a lot about human trafficking, but we don't always know what to do about it. It just is such a huge problem. So my organization we're small, we're a group of volunteers, Justice Network, and our purpose is to educate, equip, and empower our friends and neighbors to be advocates. We want to be able to do something. And we have seen in the last 12 years that God has done exceedingly abundantly beyond anything we could ask, think, or imagine, according to his power at work in us. Last year, I joined the board of the Heart of Mercy Mission, which is the humanitarian arm of Christian Women in Media. And we're really excited about the work that Heart of Mercy Mission is doing. It is changing lives of women in developing countries. So human trafficking occurs in developing countries. It occurs in the United States, all around the world. It looks different in different places. And so I'm going to just take a moment to educate. And so just bear with me here. But so many people say, what is human trafficking? And I also want to talk about what it is not. So this is one of the slides that we use at the Coalition Against Human Trafficking. And so in order for this exploitation, because it's all exploitation, but in order for it to be human trafficking, by law, there has to be an element of force, fraud, or coercion. That can look like different things. Force seems like violent, and force, but fraud and coercion look like different things. It looks like false promises. It looks like um, something that we call boyfriending, where a boy just entices a girl to be his girlfriend, but then he he gets control over her and mind control. Um, in order for something to be human trafficking, there must be force, fraud, or coercion, with one exception, and that is minors. If the victim is under 18 years old, there does not need to be force, fraud, or coercion. This is why the Epstein files, they keep using the term human trafficking. Even if these girls went willingly on these planes and they willingly went in to this mansion and the different things that they did, it may have had some force, fraud, and coercion, but even if it didn't, if they are underage, they are victims of human trafficking. Now, I said that human trafficking is the second largest and fastest growing crime because money is the factor, the driving factor behind the growth of human trafficking. When I first started 12 years ago, human trafficking was the third largest global crime. It is now the second. It has passed arms or gun trafficking and is second only to drug trafficking. And the reason for that is um, if you're a drug trafficker and you sell your drugs and you make money, now you have to get more drugs and you have to keep getting more and more in order to continue selling. But with human trafficking, you can control a person, a human being, and sell that person over and over and over, sometimes many times in a single night. Money is the driving factor. I'm sorry, this just like it gets emotional. And the last point about human trafficking of what it is that there's basically two types of human trafficking, labor trafficking and sex trafficking. Both of them are exploitation. In the United States, we hear a lot about sex trafficking because it is the prominent type of sex trafficking. Maybe about 70% sex trafficking versus 30% of labor trafficking. But both of these can happen in any area, it happens in every state. It does not matter who the victim is as far as their where they live, how much money they have, how old they are, how young they are, anybody, what race they are, how rich they are or not, anybody can be and has been victims of human trafficking. Traffickers are very clever. I hate to give them credit, but they are. And they are master manipulators, they are groomers, and they enter into relationship and they have control over their victims. So, what I wanted, I think my next slide is what human trafficking is not. And that's because we hear a lot every time I tell someone, I should say every time, but often when I tell someone I'm an advocate against human trafficking, they, they often say, well, it's just terrible what is happening at the southern border. Because the press and because the government has used the words human trafficking for something that's not trafficking. When people are trying to come into this country illegally, the crime is not human trafficking, it's human smuggling. Smuggling is a crime against a country. Trafficking is a crime against a person. Can they be conflated? Is there a risk factor? Absolutely. People without documentation, people who are brought in, and then the person that brought them over says, now you owe me. It's definitely a risk factor, but they are not the same thing. Why does trafficking happen? I said money is the driving force behind it. And what I say is let's make money the driving force against it. And I will expound on that in just a little bit when we talk about Heart of Mercy and um, how we can use money as a force against human trafficking. Why? Let's move into why, as Christian women, is this so important? Micah 6:8 talks about what God requires of us. God doesn't use the word require all that often. But here he says, he's told you, O man and O woman, I would add, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you but to do justice? We are required to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with our God. And I love the way the Talmud puts this same verse. It says, do not be daunted by the enormity of the world's grief. Do justly now. Love mercy now. Walk humbly now. I love this last part. You are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to abandon it? So I just want to talk about two men in the Bible who they seem to be ordinary guys. Now, one of them you're not going to say was ordinary, but that is Moses. Now, Moses, I would say he was the first abolitionist. When I ask that question in an audience, who's the first abolitionist? I hear Harriet Tubman, William Wilberforce, but actually Moses's people were in labor trafficking. They were forced to be there. They were being exploited. And so today's term, we would say that Moses brought his people out of labor trafficking. Moses heard from God at the burning bush, but he did not feel equipped to do the job. And God asked Moses the question, "What is in your hands?" And what did he have in his hands? It was just a shepherd's staff. It was an ordinary instrument of the trade of a shepherd. But God used that in Moses' hands to do miracles, split the Red Sea. And here in Exodus 17, when Moses' arms were raised and that shepherd's staff was raised, it was a sign of God's power and God's presence in their midst. However, Moses got tired. And so two men, Aaron and Hur, stepped up when Moses got weary, and they provided a stone for Moses to sit on, and they held up his arms. And as long as they held up his arms, the Israelites had victory. And so my goal and that of Justice Network is to just let people know that you can be a her. You can be supporting and providing support with your time, your treasure, your talents. Now, not everyone is called to stand in the thick of battle, but every believer is called to stand with those who do. And just as Aaron and Hur didn't take Moses' place, they played a crucial role in the victory, Israel's victory, simply by holding up his arms. And so if we are required to do justice, I believe that it's essential for us to be holding up the arms. Some of us are called to go out and be on the front lines and work with the survivors and do law enforcement and all the different avenues of the ministries and government. I mean, this is a human issue. It's not just a Christian issue, but as Christians, we are called to this ministry. And so getting practical, what are some things that we could do? We have time, we have treasure, we have talent. So I would ask everyone on this call, and I ask everyone when I speak about this, is what is in your hands? You have a phone, you have a computer. Find organizations that are out there that are doing the work and educate yourself. If everyone on this call shared what I shared with one other person, twice as many people would know. And I would encourage us to just continue to share and to spread that word. And just as I said, money is a driving force for trafficking. We can make it a driving force against trafficking by choosing products that are fair trade. I spoke on this at a church on Sunday, and I overheard just before somebody was talking about Trader Joe's and this cocoa that they have, and they were saying how great it was, and they were saying what flavor and how would I choose which one to buy. And I just overheard this conversation. So I just shared, you know how I would choose? In Trader Joe's, some of their coffee and chocolate and cocoa is fair trade and some is not. So if every consumer looked for that fair trade logo, they would be telling Trader Joe's that they're interested in the fair trade products. Because if we're purchasing something, sometimes fair trade items do cost more, but that's because people are getting a fair wage. So if we are not paying the price, somebody else is. Sometimes people ask me, where can I find fairly traded or direct trade items, particularly coffee, chocolate, computers, cars, cosmetics? They all start with C, just a coincidence. But my organization, justice-network.org, has a resource list of books, movies, and all kinds of products, one with just coffee, one with just chocolate, and then with all kinds of consumer goods. And I brag about it because it was somebody on my team that has been doing this research for a long time, and she's the driving force behind this. And she does an amazing job, and it is the most comprehensive list that's out there for anybody that wants to use their wallet or their treasure, so to speak, to fight against human trafficking. The other things is to look for human trafficking prevention groups that are either local or, as with Heart of Mercy Mission, that's in developing countries. So I'm just going to take a moment that this is from the website of Heart of Mercy Mission. And we have a blog where we put out a blog post once a month. We have a newsletter that goes out once a month. We ask everybody to subscribe because this is what is on the donation page. It's about compassion. And what it literally means is to suffer with the victims. And it requires action. And one of the opportunities from our home is to just support the work that Heart of Mercy Mission is doing for marginalized women in developing countries. These are some of the ways that the donations are used in this ministry. Online donations go to the food for a woman in recovery, about $50 a month. Some of these women have children to support, and they've been so exploited. They've been so mentally traumatized that their recovery is difficult. They say that a woman or a man, it could be a woman or a man, child or adult that's been exploited, that they have PTSD that is worse than a soldier returning from war. And so these needs, we work with organizations that are in developing countries, providing the medical needs, counseling, and life skills training. And so we do ask for financial support for that. Also, Heart of Mercy Mission has a tool called Awareness Advocates, and we ask for anybody that is interested in learning more about the issue of human trafficking and raising awareness in your own circles of, influence to be an awareness advocate. So I'm just going to turn this over to Rachel for a minute because Rachel is the chairperson of the Awareness Advocates program.
Yes, so becoming an awareness advocate for Heart of Mercy Mission, that might sound overwhelming. What do I need to do? But it can be as simple as just sharing the social media posts on your own platform. Just to, like Susan said, just to do our small part of letting one person or however many followers you've got know what's going on, in human trafficking and these women that we support in other countries who've been suffering so much. Also, the other opportunity is to, if you do have a platform for someone from Heart of Mercy Mission to come and speak at an event, that's another thing that you could do as an awareness advocate. So they're the two kind of ends of possibility of sharing as an awareness advocate. And when you join Heart of Mercy Mission, you become an awareness advocate. We send you a whole guidebook of how you can be involved. Thanks, Susan.
Thank you, Rachel. I just want to close with this thought, and that is, we often read that Jesus fed the 5,000. In fact, it'll say that right in your Bible. Jesus feeds the 5,000. 5,000 men plus women and children. But the truth is, Jesus didn't actually feed them. Jesus asked the disciples, what do you have? What God asked Moses, what's in your hands? What do you have? They had 2 fish and 5 loaves, and Jesus broke the loaves, but he handed it to the disciples, and it was the disciples who fed the 5,000. just ordinary people like us. They are the ones that fed the 5,000 over and over again. They just kept reaching in and they just kept feeding, and they were part of the miracle. At the end, it says that there were 12 basketfuls left over. There were 12 disciples. There were 12 baskets of a miracle left over. Each disciple was holding the physical manifestation of that miracle, but they participated. Jesus is responsible for the miracle, but they are responsible for feeding the 5,000. They worked on his behalf. And I've seen in the short time that I've been an advocate against trafficking, God continued to multiply. You know, we're a small group, but we've had social media campaigns, we've had fair trade shopping events, we've been able to provide clothing drives for women who are victims and now are survivors. I've seen God multiply. I've seen him do exceedingly abundantly beyond all we ask, think, or imagine, according to his power at work in us. And so that is what, I would want to leave you with is to not make the mistake of doing nothing because we could only do a little. I just saw this week a little meme, and it was a handwritten note that somebody said, in quotes, "But what can I do? I'm just one person." Said 7 billion people. And so I think as, we all use our time, treasure, and talent to, now that we're aware about human trafficking, find out more about it and just see how God would have us engage in the fight against really this abomination against his people. Thank you.
Thanks, Susan. I was just thinking that